I left South Korea in August of 2020 after 4 years of living and working there as a native English teacher. I originally applied through EPIC and got placed in the Cholanamdo language program. Now, it's been a few months since I've been back and I've had plenty of time to reflect on my time living and teaching in South Korea. If you've come across my channel before, then you know that I have made videos about living in Korea in the past, but today I wanted to do the ultimate guide to teaching in Korea. The topics that I'm going to talk about in this video are based off my own experiences and stories from other teachers I've met over the past 4 years, based off a public school environment. So if you are looking to work for a private academy or a hagwon, then not all of this information is necessarily going to apply to you. There's a huge amount of things that I wanted to cover in this ultimate guide, and so for easier viewing, what I'm going to do is split them into 6 shorter videos. All 6 of these videos are going to be linked down below in a playlist, and you can also find them on my channel. Everything is going to be time-stamped so that you can skip to a specific topic that interests you. The 6 videos will be: number 1, where will I live, city versus rural. Number 2, landing in Korea, orientation and contracts. Number 3, after school, apartments and co-teachers. Number 4, teaching schedules, class types and the weekends. Number 5, your first class, teaching tips and attitude to teaching. And number 6, the pros, the cons and the reality of teaching in South Korea. If you haven't already checked out the previous videos and topics to this ultimate guide, then go and do that first. Otherwise, let's crack on with the next topic. When I think about my very first classes, I have a good chuckle at how awkward and terrible my lesson plans were. It is totally normal to be nervous, and it's probably going to take a few weeks for you to get used to your surroundings and to get comfortable with the lesson planning, the materials, and your students. My very first class was a textbook class with an interactive CD for elementary students, and it was very clear in that first lesson that I had no idea how to use this interactive CD, and I just winged it. To make matters worse, that class was actually nicknamed the zombie class by the rest of the staff in the school because they were known to be completely silent with poker faces no matter what you did with them. But my next class after that were very excited and loud and enthusiastic, so not all kids are the same. So for your first classes, it is likely that you are going to be thrown straight into the deep end and be expected to teach straight off the bat without any shadowing or detailed description as to what you should be doing. As far as your co-teachers are concerned, you have just gone through a TEFL training and an orientation training, so you should know exactly what you need to do, right? You might have a great co-teacher who will take the lead to begin with to give you a chance to settle and figure out how things work, but you also might not. Don't panic though. It's a good idea to prepare some kind of introductory lesson for when you first get to your school. This will give the students time to get to know you, to ask you questions about yourself and your life and where you come from, because they're going to be very curious about you. You can do this in the form of a PowerPoint presentation or a video or a simple question and answer, however you feel comfortable doing this. I saw a teacher do a really fun PowerPoint where they had letters of the alphabet on the main page and the kids would pick one. So let's, for example, say S, and you'd have them guess what the S meant. So perhaps it was sports or special talents. Then once you clicked on that letter, it would lead to another slide. And if you had decided that S meant sports, then there would be words, pictures, videos on that page that represented sports. You could then discuss with the students, get them talking about what sports the teacher likes, what can they see on the slide, and what sports they like as well, before moving on to another letter. You can teach this introductory lesson a few times to different classes, and this is going to give you some extra time to go through the textbook materials to figure out how it all works and what you need to prepare. How will the students react to you? Well, you're probably filling a position, and so your students have probably met a native English-speaking teacher before, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be excited by you. You are going to be the talk of the school. You are a new teacher, a new face. You are going to be momentarily famous. I'm exaggerating. So I'm boring, I'm white, short, dark hair, but I remember my very first 5th grade class coming up to me after the class had finished to come and touch my hair. They were fascinated by this bridge of my nose for some reason, the fact that my face was small, and they wanted me to take my glasses off so they could see my eyes. And for some reason I developed the nickname Snow White because I had short hair at the time actually. But I remember being very shocked that these students were so fascinated by how I looked that they were physically surrounding me and touching me. I was like, what are you doing? Basically, they might stare at you a bit, might want to come and touch you depending on the age group, but they are weirdly astonished by you, by your appearance, and very interested in where you've come from. Students start learning English in grade 3 of elementary school. By middle school, they are working on simple conversations. Now, depending on where your school is, depends on the level of your students. In a rural setting, students' English level is probably going to be lower than a school in a big city. City students have more access to private academies outside of school, and they're more likely to start studying things like English from a younger age. Some students will study English outside of your school time, and so you might get a handful of students who are way more advanced than the rest of the class. My first tip is just to presume that the level is quite low. Your first few classes, you are getting to know the students, so you don't really know their level yet, and it's going to take you some time to figure that out. But you also want your students to enjoy their time with you, and so if you go in with lessons that are too difficult and too demanding, then you and the students are going to leave feeling quite frustrated, and they're going to be less likely to be enthusiastic the next time around. Number 2, be aware of how fast you talk and what language you use. Especially with lower level students and younger students whose English vocabulary is going to be quite limited. You talk faster than you think. If you go in with full speed English, they're going to be like a deer in headlights and not have a clue what you are saying. When they panic that they can't understand what they're saying, they're more likely to switch off and not listen anyway. You may also have an accent that they've never heard before depending on where you come from. Now, my textbooks were American English that I taught from, and I have a standard British accent, but they were still very confused by how I pronounced certain words. I would also explain the difference between British and American pronunciation, so I'd say, hey, the textbook Interactive CD is saying water like water, 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 but I say water. Help them understand you. Slow down, and if they don't seem to be understanding what you're trying to get across to them, use simpler sentences, simpler vocabulary, and use gestures. Number 3, make it fun. If you're having fun, then your students are probably also having fun. Engaging and creative lessons are going to encourage your students to be enthusiastic about learning English and participate in your class. Number 4, students learn differently. Not everybody learns in the same way. Make sure to get all of the different learning styles into your lessons through speaking, listening, reading, and writing to give all students the chance to be able to take in the information. Number 5, when introducing new vocabulary, repetition is useful, especially with younger kids. Drilling exercises allow the students to memorize and practice pronunciation. I would always review vocabulary at the beginning of lessons, and then if I had time, at the end of lessons as well. They are going to leave your classroom and not use that set of vocabulary or phrase for another couple of days, or at least until you see them next. So you want them to remember as much as possible, but make it fun. Number 6, sometimes lessons just don't work, and that is okay. Maybe the kids were having an off day, you were having an off day, that activity just didn't work for that age group. Maybe it's a Friday or the lesson is right before lunch, so their brain is on food instead of you. Note what activities do and don't work with specific age groups or class groups as you go. Then in the future you can think, okay, this type of activity doesn't work for this class, so I'm going to not do that. Number 7, don't overcomplicate your lesson planning. It is not rocket science. Give yourself a basic template that you can use again and again. For example, an introduction/review, 1 to 2 short activities, 1 longer activity, a review, and then wrap up. It all depends on what and who you are teaching, but if you create yourself a reusable structure that you can use again and again, it's going to make your life easier when planning and presenting. Number 8, maximize student talking time. Have them talk to each other in pairs or in groups during activities. Have them do most of the talking so that you can encourage them to gain confidence and conversational skills. Talk to your students before and after class if you have time, which leads on to the next point. Make time at the beginning or end of a lesson, if possible, for English talking time. It only has to be for a few minutes, but ask them questions. What the weather's like today, what they're going to do at the weekend, what did they eat for lunch today, what class do they have next. This just helps encourage conversational skills and confidence, and you'll also build a relationship with your students. Number 10, establish classroom rules early. This is going to help you with your classroom management. You can even have the students discuss what rules they think is appropriate for your classroom. It can be simple things as quiet when the teacher is talking, phones away during class, and respect other students. Number 11, find ways to grab your students' attention during noisy activities or games. It could be as simple as a bell, a word, a phrase, a clapping rhythm. Whatever you decide to do, your students need to know that when they hear it, or when they see it, they should look at you and be quiet. Eyes on me, eyes on you. Number 12, get your students used to and comfortable with your directions when you are explaining activities and homework. Don't just rely on the Korean translation from your co-teacher. Try in English a few times, and if it's not working, switch to Korean. In fact, you can even teach your students certain words that you may use often when explaining activities such as in pairs, read, write, etc. Then the students, when they hear it, know what it means. For example, if you are doing a speaking activity where you want your students to stand up, find a partner, play rock, paper, scissors, and then practice a dialogue. You are not going to explain that as I just did, all in one. Make it simple and break it down sentence by sentence. So, number 1, stand up. Ask the students, what did I just say? Establish that they know what that means in Korean. Repeat that sentence by sentence until you have explained the full activity and that the students know what they are doing. Number 13, games are taken very seriously by Korean students. They get very competitive, which can be quite fun, but depending on your age group, a few students might get a little upset if it gets too competitive, so just be wary. Number 14, write up your lesson plans. Keep your lesson plans and your materials stored somewhere safe that you can access so you can reuse them again in the future, or you might even want to share them with other teachers. Number 15, don't be afraid to go off topic sometimes. Try not to do it a huge amount, otherwise you'll never get through your textbook classes. But if a student brings up a culture point or a language point, don't be afraid to explore it with them. Or feel free to create lessons based around culture or places around the world. In my experience, the students really loved lessons that were about different countries and cultures and languages. I once asked my students where they think the English language originated from, and they said Greece, so. And number 16, you cannot change how the Korean education system works. Now, this is an odd one, but bear with me a moment. You might come across something and think that doesn't work, or this would work better if it was done like this. Especially if you're serious about teaching, you might come across limitations or certain things that frustrate you, but unfortunately you need to just put it away. Just put it away. You cannot change a whole system. It sounds awful, but it's wasted energy. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure not to miss the next installment of the Ultimate Teaching Guide in Korea. You can find the playlist down below or on my channel. Yeah, I hope to see you in the next video and have a great day.